This is Richard Jacobs with MyDUIAttorney.org. I'm here today with Stuart Collis, a criminal lawyer in Michigan in the Ypsilanti area. How you doing, Mr. Collis?
I'm doing well. How are you, Richard?
Good, good. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. And without any further delay, let's get right into the questions. My first one for you is, what made you choose to handle DUI cases, and what motivates you to be a criminal defense attorney in general?
My biggest concern in representing individuals is to make sure that their personal and constitutional rights are protected. When I was in law school, that was one of the main things that I wanted to make sure that it was guaranteed, because everyone has certain constitutional rights. And it is our job as a criminal attorney or even a drunk driving attorney to make sure that those are protected. Police have bounds, and they need to be kept within them.
Okay. And over the years, how many DUI cases have you handled?
I've been in practice now, it'll be 15 years in June, and you can't even tell you how many. It's they're at least several hundred, probably getting into, well, maybe not getting into thousands, but several hundred.
Okay. And of the people that you see, is there any typical circumstance where they come to you? Do you see a lot more first-timers or repeat, or more men or women, or older people or younger?
I've seen people from every walk of life. I've seen rich, I've seen poor, I've seen the 3, 4, 5, 6-time offenders. I've seen the first-time offenders who are very ashamed. There's no typical client that I service.
Okay. Of the clients that you service, do a lot of them end up close to that .08 limit, or do you see a lot of people that are a lot higher? Is there any consistency?
Hang on, I've got a message here saying something about too slow. Maybe.
Okay, restarting the question. So a lot of the clients that you see, do a lot of them have a high blood alcohol level that's a lot higher than .08, or are many of them close to the limit?
It's very rare to see someone at .08 limit. It does happen. It wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago that Michigan went to a .08. We used to be .10, and I usually see people usually .13, .14, .15. Obviously, but I've seen them as high as I believe a .37 is the highest I serviced.
Wow. That's they're supposed to be dead at that level, right?
.40 is supposedly dead, but I know of an attorney who had someone with .42. But personally, I have never handled anything worse than a .37.
That's amazing. Okay. Of the cases,
like I said, I get all the time.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I've had, like I said, all kinds of clients, and you know, the big thing is that we have, first in Michigan, many times people are given what's called a PBT, or preliminary breath test, and
Right.
that's usually establishes probable cause for the police to take in, and those PBTs are extraordinarily inaccurate. The ones that are at the station, the actual data master devices are the actual data master devices are better, but they aren't always very accurate either. There's a lot of discussion, at least in this state, always has been a lot of discussion on how these particular machines work. And again, this is something that depends on the potential client. Or you know, we have expert witnesses who will testify that bread will register as alcohol on these things. They're good to an extent because it's measuring something, but
Right.
the state of Michigan won't release how exactly the data master device works.
Really?
No.
I guess they don't want it to be hacked somehow. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a hacking issue. I think it's more of a matter that they don't want the data master to be challenged more than it already is.
Yeah, that's true. They would open it up. People would scrutinize it to death, look for any problem that they could find. I got you.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Of the cases that you see, do you see a lot more due to alcohol or due to drugs? And of the drug ones, are they harder or easier to defend?
I tend to see more of the alcohol cases than the drug cases. I have done the cases involving drugs. I have not found either one more difficult than the other to defend. The alcohol ones certainly are much more common. The ones that are usually drug offenses, usually they've been caught on other things before, but usually, I don't know what it is, but I have not found it that as many people do drugs and drive. It seems to be the drinking, because people feel when they've drank that they are more competent than they might otherwise be when they go out to drive.
Okay. Hmm. I guess the drinking gives you more confidence and impaired judgment to make yourself feel like you can do it.
And not only that, but I think that when an individual does drugs, they clearly get that high and they feel that sensation, whereas with alcohol, especially someone that may have built some sort of tolerance to it, they don't have the same skill to differentiate the difference between being sober and maybe being over the limit. Plus, with a .08, that's not exactly a very high limit. You could be what most people would feel is tipsy and feel like, oh, well, it's all right to go and take a drive.
Yeah. What would you say is unique about the DUI laws in the counties that you serve and in the state that you're in Michigan?
Well, every city, every county has their own way of prosecuting these particular claims. What's more concerning is that Michigan just enacted this year what's called the super drunk driving statute. So when an individual comes in my office with a .16 or higher, they are facing extra penalties than if they had just a normal drunk driving offense. That just changed. No, I'm sorry, that didn't change in January. That changed in October of this year.
Okay, very recent.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a lot of your cases will be, what, .13 or higher, so it may turn a lot of your cases into the super cases, right?
The super drunk driving law is definitely going to have an impact on Michigan drivers. It's definitely going to have an impact on my typical client, and there's going to be a lot of good people who maybe first-time offenders who are going to find themselves in a much worse situation than they would have, say, September.
Well, can you say what the differences are in the law? What's the increased penalties?
Hang on, I need to pull it all up.
Sure.
I better turn off my cell phone. That's good. All right. So.
Yeah, we were talking about the new super level of drunk driving. Can you talk a little bit about what that entails for people that are charged with it?
Well, as I was saying, this was enacted by Jennifer Granholm, who the governor who just left, and she enacted this law that basically said anyone with a .17 or higher on their blood alcohol content is subject to this new law. This really impacts the first offender a lot greater than it does the second offender or third offender, because the first offender is essentially treated like a subsequent offender. They are subject to potential of impoundment of the car, potential of breath interlock devices. Their fines minimums go up from the normal drunk driving or even impaired driving. So there's quite a bit of heftier sanctions for this. And as I said, the person who goes out and parties a little too hard on one given night, they come out with his breath alcohol that's pretty high, is going to be facing these super penalties, whereas just 4 months ago that was not the case.
I gotcha. Okay. To change direction a little bit, what would be your best tip if someone's been drinking a little bit or a lot and they see the blue lights come on behind them, they're being pulled over? What should they do and what shouldn't they do at that point?
Well, the first thing to do is obviously comply with the officers. The worst thing that anyone could do is give false names, false information, because that will result in other criminal charges like resisting and obstructing a police officer in their line of duty. If the blue lights come on and you start to drive away, that's a fleeing and eluding, which is a felony. These are definitely things that want to be avoided. If you've been drinking a little or a lot and the police officer comes up to you, he has an absolute right to do the alcohol testing. You'll be given an option whether or not to take a PBT, but if you refuse the preliminary breath test, you could also be hit with a 6-month suspension of your license. So again, it is critical that you do whatever it is the police officer says to comply. That being said, there are limits. He's allowed to inquire into certain things like, well, have you been drinking tonight, etc., without it being a violation of your right to self-incrimination, because it's a probable cause type of stop at this moment in time.
Okay.
But he's not allowed to go further than that. I mean, obviously, he's going to be able to test you for the drunk driving. He's going to give you the right to have a blood test, as opposed to going to the station and having a breath test. These rights you do have, but again, there are limits to what the officer can do. If you don't want to answer anything more than what is simple and straightforward, go through the testing and do the best you can. Unfortunately, like I said, the resistance, it's only going to make things worse.
Right. Well, what kinds of help can you provide to the people that you work with? Can you reduce jail time or fines or fees, or what kind of benefits do you bring when you represent them?
Well, first of all, obviously, I have generally a greater understanding of the law than your average ordinary individual. This is what I went to law school for. This is what I study. This is what I practice on a daily basis. So I'm going to be able to make sure that they have their constitutional rights protected. I'm going to be able to make sure that the police followed all the correct procedures, that they made sure that their data master was properly calibrated, that they had fulfilled the 15-minute waiting requirement between the time that before the breath test was given, so that there was no foreign objects put in the mouth, etc., that might skew the results, which would make them invalid. So I'm going to be able to serve first of all as a double check on all the constitutional rights as well as the administrative procedures that are required to be followed every time that there is a breath alcohol device test done.
Okay.
Secondly, what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to negotiate with the prosecuting attorney, whoever it may be in whatever county, city, or state, to get the best possible result if this is just a plea situation. If it's not a plea situation, I could certainly bring motions to the court for reasons why evidence must be suppressed or why the case should be dismissed prior to even a trial. And if it gets to a trial, obviously I have connections with the appropriate expert witnesses to bring them in to testify as to why certain things are not as obvious as they might seem or as presented by a prosecuting attorney.
Okay. What level of success have you had in getting any of the possible punishments reduced in the end result for your clients?